everyone, it's Nicole for Lawn Fawn, and today I am sharing this Halloween Hillside pop-up card. It's an interactive card that features not only a fantastic detailed Halloween scene on the front of the card, but on the inside of the card as well. We're going to start with the front of the card and build this sweet little pumpkin patch scene with a haunted house in the background and a ghost pulling a wagon of pumpkins, and finish with the inside scene that features more of the pumpkin patch and cute little ghosts. This card is going to feature lots of stamps and dies from Lawn Fawn, kind of mixing and matching different fall and Halloween themed stamp sets with some kind of basic type of dies to create this Halloween interactive scene card. I'm starting with a piece of A2 sized smooth white cardstock. This is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. I'm inking this with a combination of wilted lilac, blueprint sketch, and chipped sapphire distress inks. Because I'm inking on a traditional Nina smooth white cardstock, it sometimes takes just a tiny bit more effort to get that seamless blend. I like to start with a little bit lighter hand and then kind of work the saturation of the ink into the cardstock until I get the blend and that transition of one color to the next that I'm going for. That addition of purple kind of helps with the spooky Halloween fall feel of the card, I think. I like that with the blues of the sky. Once I have that, I'm going to take some Picket Fence Distress Paint, water it down with some water, and flick this over the background to kind of give it the illusion of this starry, spooky night sky. And I'm going to let this paint dry all the way before I put anything on top. Now I'm also taking the Spooky Fence border die cut from some black licorice cardstock. We'll also be taking a Grassy border die cut from smooth white cardstock, and that's going to go on the front of the card. And then a simple Hillside border, which it has the same kind of blades of grass design, is going to go back behind this. I tend to like to do these in groups of 3, or at least have my grass 2 layers of the grass, I guess I want to say, so I can tuck things in it. I want the illusion of this pumpkin patch, you know, the kind of brown, dry, fall type of grass, or there, the fence tucked in between, and then my haunted house in the background, and then these corn stalks and stuff. Sort of like it's a corn maze pumpkin patch is the story that I'm kind of telling here. I'm inking up my grass then with mustard seed and rusty hinge, and it was still just a little too bright for my liking, even though I liked those colors. So I'm darkening up the edges with a little gathered twigs. I'm going to do this for any of the grassy borders that you see in the card. They will be colored with this same trio of colors. That goes for the sky combination as well. On the inside of the card, we will be using those same 3 distress ink colors for that as well. So there's my cute little spooky fence. We're going to have 2 borders here. We will ink them both up the same and kind of sandwich that fence in between. From the Happy Harvest stamp set, which has been one of my favorite stamp sets here for the last couple years, I am going to take the cornstalk from this and stamp this with 3 different colors of Lawn Fawn ink. We're going to use the dough ink, pizza crust, which is a newer color, that's the color I just used, and sunflower. Kind of some of them are a little bit more dried out than others, was kind of what I was thinking. I just wanted them all to be basically in neutrals, kind of more in the brown color family, so that I could really add the color with the pumpkins and the wagon and that night sky. Everything else is very much in neutrals. Then we're going to go ahead and die cut all of these. I used scraps of white cardstock that I had all over the place for those corn stalks. Now the images here are from several stamp sets. We are using pumpkins from the Happy Harvest stamp set, the same set that the Cardstock comes from. The ghosts are from the Booyah stamp set, which is a great kind of ghost builder stamp set where you can build them with Halloween costumes. We're going to have a ghost, Frankenstein, and vampire for this card today, but you can make all kinds of different little ghosts there. And then pumpkins from the Pick of the Patch stamp set, which was new this year. And finally, our haunted house and bats and moon from the Happy Haunting stamp set, which is several years old, but continues to be one of my favorites for Halloween scene building. I have sped up the coloring in the video to save time today. There is a lot of coloring. This is a very in-depth video in that it's not really just one scene, but two. So you kind of have to think about it as doubling what you're doing. If you were not going to add the inside elements to make it an interactive pop-up, it wouldn't take quite as much time. The coloring is actually very easy. A lot of it is repetition. Anytime that I color additional pumpkins later on in the video, I am not going to share that part. Same goes for the ghosts, because I'm going to be using some of these same color combinations you see here. For a pop of color with all of the neutrals, the bluish purple of the sky, and then the oranges and greens and yellows of my pumpkins, I decided to go with a little red wagon. I'm a big fan of adding a little pop of red to almost every single card. And I deepened and darkened this up with red 89. Some cool grays for the wheels and the handle. We'll do red for the inside of the wheels. The haunted house, I wanted it to look like the windows are all glowing. These are going to be colored with yellow, red 30 and 31. Same thing goes for the moon. This is the same color combination I'm going to use for that. And then for the house itself, again with neutrals, E43, 44, 47, and 49. The roof is going to be in shades of cool gray 5 and 7, but everything else on the card will be in shades of brown, including the porch. A lot of that you're not going to see in the finished card simply because it's tucked down behind a layer. And this is more of a scene building element. I don't necessarily have to see the whole thing to know that there is this kind of creepy, cute haunted house in the background on this Halloween scene card. Just add some color to the rest of the areas on this. We'll color in our ghost, and then we can start die cutting all of these elements. Adding my grays. I kind of didn't like that gray down there, so I actually covered it up with some dark browns. And add in a little bit more shading on the roof with a little bit darker cool gray. And then we're also going to use cool grays for the ghost, but these are going to be very light cool grays. So cool gray 3, 2, and 0, 0 just around the edges. The hat's going to have an orange color combination, a yellow color combination, and then those cool grays in the darker tones. And then once we have all of the coloring and shading done here, we want to make sure that we have all of the cornstalks. We have all of these elements stamped, or pardon me, die cut and ready to assemble. Now you can customize the Booyah ghost images with any of the faces and accessories. I also want some bats from the Happy Haunting, so I stamped those with some black ink. I added a face to my ghost with a little R00 for the cheeks. And then I'm simply going to tape my dies in place and run this through the machine until I have everything die cut. We're going to start with our borders along the bottom edge, And I'm going to tuck my fence back behind the border that's going to be on the foreground of the card to make sure that it is lined up the way I want it to look first. Then we're going to tuck our other grass back behind. It doesn't actually have to be as tall. You can make that work however you need to. And then we're going to tuck our haunted house in place. So we're building from the back up. I put my borders down, and then we're going to add our house, our moon, and the corn stalks, and then finish it with everything that goes in the foreground of the card. In this case, pumpkins, a wagon full of pumpkins, and our cute little witch ghost. And I really like these corn stalks here. I think they add a lot to the design. I'm just gluing those down, tucking them between different layers, sometimes back behind the very back layer, sometimes in between, but back behind the fence. It just really depends. There's not a huge rhyme or reason here. It's more just kind of whatever felt right to me until I got it filled in nicely. The moon also is hanging off the top of the card. Once you're finished designing, you can always just trim off that excess. I think it helps ground the scene a little bit to have certain elements off the side. We're going to have a couple bats up here by the moon, both of the large and small. And then we're ready to attach the things along the bottom edge. Now, I attached everything with glue dots pretty much, except for the top of the ghost. Because there's so many layers along the bottom edge of the card, I attached the bottom of the ghost with glue dots, but I'm going to attach the hat with foam adhesive just underneath that part of the image to make it lay nicer. I'm taking Nuvo Crystal Drops in White Blizzard and adding glitter to the moon and also to the windows for that nice glowy effect. And then my greetings are all going to be from Pick of the Patch. That goes for the front of the card and the inside of the card. I wanted them to have the same style, the same font, and they end up working really nice together. Our greetings for the front of the card. I guess real quick, I did take some white or a white pen and add some highlights to certain areas on the design. I didn't kind of go overboard, just added a few here and there to everything. And then my greetings for the front are going to read, "Have a very beautiful Halloween." We're going to stamp this with the lawnfawn clear embossing ink and heat set with lawnfawn white embossing powder. And that's really going to finish off the front of the card. We're going to pop this panel on the front of a side fold card base once we have heat set our sentiment. And this very full but very fun and festive, spooky, cute Halloween scene on the front of the card is all finished. And we can work on finishing up the storytelling and design with the inside of our card. Now for the inside, I did start by stamping my sentiment before I added interactive elements. I have learned over time that when you add that stitched hillside pop-up, it can be kind of difficult to add your greeting. So I'm taking the "You're the Pick of the Patch" greetings and stamping that with black ink on the inside of the card to finish off my sentiment. And then I inked a panel die cut with a small stitched rectangle. This is exactly like the front panel, colored with chipped sapphire, blueprint sketch, and wilted violet ink, splattered with picket fence paint. Waited till it dried and then adhered it to the inside. I like to do my panel in a smaller size than A2 because it tends to fit on the inside of your card much nicer. So that's where using a rectangular die cut comes in handy. I'm folding up that stitched hillside pop-up now, and I always have to kind of fiddle with it so that I can remember how those tabs work. And then what's awesome about the stitched hillside pop-up is that there's lots of different add-ons that you can customize. And so I went ahead and die cut these from smooth white cardstock and inked them like I did for the borders on the front. And these are the Grassy Hillside pop-up add-ons that I am customizing this so that the scene very much resembles the one on the front. It's very seamless. Everything looks very similar. We're going to have a lot of the same elements for the inside. Then I'm simply going to fold these down, and actually you need to fold them all the way down. Don't do what I just did there. Fold them all the way down and flat. You can see I realized right away I messed that up. Luckily, that's not going to ruin the inside of my card. Fold them all the way down, fold it down, push that shut, and there are your little pop-ups. That one did not want to stick, so I'm going to put a little bit more adhesive on that. Fold that down, pick it up, and there is my cute background scene. So now we need the elements to finish off this inside of the card. This is where I have stamped more corn stalks, I've stamped more pumpkins, and I've also got 2 additional ghosts. Now one of them I kind of had originally thought I'd do with a kitty, and so I added whiskers. Please ignore that. I ended up going with Frankenstein instead. So I stamped another ghost and simply just added the head or the hair onto him. I did add the coloring or leave the coloring in for some of these elements like the vampire head and wings. I thought that really worked nicely with the little bats that we have for the rest of the design. And then for the hair for Frankenstein, instead of making the ghost green, which I also think is super cute, I just did the hair in green so that I could keep the ghost in ghostly white, I guess. And they're kind of going to be hidden, kind of like they're floating up in this corn maze or this cornfield, pumpkin patch, whatever you want to call it. And then again, just like before, you need to die cut all of the elements. And that's probably the most time consuming thing besides coloring is just simply die cutting all of those corn stalks over and over. But once you have it all, then you can start building the scene. So I want to tuck some of them back behind the back border, some behind the front. Then we're going to have a vampire ghost adhered on the back of the card, his little boo speech bubble. We'll have the additional bats that we've stamped and die cut from Happy Haunting spread throughout the design. But on the forefront, to kind of really tie in with the sentiment we're using for this card, we're going to add our groups of pumpkins. I really liked kind of going through my stamp sets and mixing and matching pumpkins from different sets. These, again, are from Pick of the Patch or Happy Harvest. And I like that they're a little bit different design maybe, but they all work together beautifully. That's always my very favorite thing about lawnfawn is that you can seamlessly mix and match from multiple sets to really build whatever scene that you're wanting to build. Now, when adding things to these pop-up borders, make sure you're really aware of where your adhesive is. So if it hangs up and above any of the borders, you don't want adhesive back there because when you fold your card flat and put it in an envelope, it could stick. So make sure, like the pumpkins that are hanging over the top of the grass, that the adhesive is only along the bottom, that the corn stalks that are tucked back behind, adhesive is on the front of those, just down at the bottom. Everything else hangs loose so that it all pops up when the card is opened. And then mix and match. Have some in the front, some kind of back behind the border, some in front of the border, just to fill it in really nicely. We'll add our little Frankenstein ghost. We're going to finish off their sweet little faces with a black glaze pen to the eyes to really make the eyes pop. We, of course, want to take our white pen again and add highlights to these images so that they really coordinate nicely with the images on the front of the card. Everything is tied together really well. And then once that's all done, I am going to open and close the card so you can see what it will look like when the recipient takes it out of the envelope and opens it up. I think this Stitched Hillside pop-up is just genius. I know it's been out for a couple years now, but I just love that there's add-ons and lots of great ways to use this. So here is what the finished card design looks like. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this interactive Halloween card featuring Lawn Fawn stamps and dies. Please be sure to visit the Lawn Fawn blog for more inspiration. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.